Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to give one more minute for some other folks to join in. So please sit tight and we will get started here shortly. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Pankaj, and I would love to welcome you to the Transforming Data into Results webinar. We're going to talk about how you can maximize the impact across your bottom line and your top line at each stage of the talent lifecycle using data. What we will cover today, from a small housekeeping standpoint, you can ask questions at any time via Zoom. So please feel free to send your questions in the Q&A panel in the Zoom. We will field questions throughout, and we will also keep 10 minutes at the end to take Q&A. And any questions that we cannot get to during the webinar, we will absolutely follow up with answers. Also, we will be distributing a recording later on. So please make sure that you don't need to take notes. This will be available to all of you who registered for the webinar. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Pankaj. I'm one of the founders of Sense. Sense is an engagement platform that I'll talk about here in a minute. But first, let me also welcome, super excited to talk about April and Azadeen onto the webinar today. So April and Azadeen, if you wouldn't mind turning your videos on and joining me. April, will you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, thanks, Pankaj. My name is April Artiaga, and I'm the sales director of PandoLogic, and I specifically work with staffing and RPO companies. I've been in the staffing industry for over 15 years, and I'm really excited to be here today with you guys.
Thank you. Azadeen?
Thank you, Pankaj. Thanks for having me. I'm Azadeen Ohida. I'm the VP of IT Operations and Marketing for Kimco Staffing Services and all its divisions. I've been with Kimco for 9 years, going on 10.
Wonderful. Thank you. So here is a little bit of an agenda that we are going to be covering today. We will talk about, is the amount of data that you have today actually working for you? As staffing companies, we collect a lot of data, and we will talk about what that data is enabling for you today. Then we're going to switch into talking about what that data can do across the life cycle. And when I say the life cycle, starting all the way from sourcing and attracting candidates to actually bringing them on, onboarding them, taking care of them while they're on assignment, and then redeploying them. And then we will talk about how you can actually build a tech stack that will allow you to harness the power of that data. And eventually we'll end up with some Q&A, and we hope to keep this very interactive. Really excited about April and Azadeen being on. They're both industry experts, so we would be able to take as many questions as you throw at us. So I'll get right into it. If you would indulge me for a second, for those of you who do not know about Sense, I'll give you a quick summary about the company. Like I said, my name is Pankaj, one of the founders of the firm. We've now been in business for going on 5 years. Sense started at the beginning of 2016 with one sole mission, which essentially was to build the first engagement platform for the staffing industry and help staffing companies, reduce their cost, increase their profitability. We've actually stayed very true to that mission. Today, we work with over 300 customers, actually nearly 350 customers, every single one of whom is a staffing firm. The other thing we did right in the very beginning is we built the product to be enterprise ready. So we did the heavy lifting right up front. And that actually shows in the results. We today work with 6 of the top 10 largest staffing companies in the US. And we also work with a third of the largest staffing companies in the country. These are staffing companies recognized by SIA as firms with over $100 million in revenue. Since the company started, we've raised about $24 million in capital from Google Ventures and Axel Partners, a couple of the best blue chip investors you can hope to have in your company. Sense's platform actually works around 3 different pillars: growth, retention, and automation. Growth talks about adding more to the top of your funnel. How can we help you make more placements, use your data, use the candidates that already exist in your database to actually improve your top line? Retention talks about plugging the holes in the leaky bucket that every staffing company has, which essentially means, how do we have people stay with you longer? How do we get them redeployed? How do we reduce your drop-off rates, which essentially impacts your bottom line? And then lastly, and most importantly, automation. What can we take away from your recruiters to give them time back into their day to actually talk to customers as well as candidates? Those are the 3 pillars that Sense talks about. We'll obviously talk a lot about how we can help you harness your data, but super excited to be here today. April, I'll pass this on to you.
Thank you, Pankaj. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. PandoLogic is a technology company that's solely focused on helping employers, staffing companies, and RPOs source quality candidates faster and more efficiently by the use of our AI-enabled programmatic platform. We do this 3 different ways: by using big data, 200 billion data points to be exact, artificial intelligence, which we'll talk more about today, and then our proprietary algorithms. And by fully automating the job sourcing process, we're able to save our partners 25 to 50% of their job posting spend. So, utilizing data and looking at it strategically can really help you drive down your internal costs, and you can reallocate them across the rest of your strategy.
Awesome. Azadeen? I think you're on mute.
It would help if I wasn't muted. Thank you so much, Pankaj. Kimco Staffing Services is one of the country's largest independent staffing firms. We're based out of Orange County, California. We service California and many, many other states, and really can do business in any state. We offer typical temporary contract payroll services, direct hire, and we also do a lot of customized programs for our clients, depending on the needs. The practices that we the lanes we play in, industrial, light industrial, office professionals, managed services, and we also have divisions that focus on healthcare, accounting, on finance, and technology. We also have a sister company that provides services for small to mid-sized companies that need HR services, payroll services, and kind of outsourcing any work that that they can't do on the professional services side. As you can tell, we've been in business since 1986, so we've serviced a lot of clients. We've filled a lot of positions, employed a lot of people, and a lot of what we're going to talk about really cannot happen if you don't utilize technology, you don't utilize data properly. We're very proud of the awards that we've won over the years for all our divisions, and really our purpose, right? Kind of using the word you use, Pankaj, is changing lives one job at a time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So let's get right into it. You know, the first thing that we wanted to talk about today is how has the tech stack within staffing, you know, evolved? You know, what does that evolution look like? April's going to talk a little bit more about this as well, but I can tell you this, you know, while this evolution, you know, has been gradual, it is very, very relevant today. If you think about it, digital transformation arrived for everybody in a hurry. You know, back when the pandemic hit in early March, April timeframe, most staffing companies, regardless of where you were in your digital transformation journey, you had no choice but to get there in a hurry. You know, your employees were remote, your candidates were mostly remote, you could no longer be in person in touch with your customers. So that essentially, you know, has brought into stark contrast how technology can enable your operations. April, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. And then certainly this is something we can get deeper into.
Absolutely. I love this slide just from the sheer point of just the change in the way technology has looked over time, even now to how I remember as a kiddo having a remote control to change the TV, and now my kids are masters at the flat screen, right? It's completely evolved. And so I was thinking about my early days in staffing versus what it's like today. And every one of these buttons has become an automated process, or there's the ability for it to be automated. And if you think about how we acquire jobs today, that used to be a manual process. I remember early days of Monster where people were still talking about how they would introduce clients to the internet. And now here we are today, everything's completely automated and we're managing 500 sites at a time and we're getting real-time data. And that data is helping us make really smart decisions. So I think that's part of the theme that we're going to talk about today is just how this evolution has happened and how if you're not fully maximizing this today, there's a really great opportunity to do so.
And Pankaj, just to add to that real quick, you spoke about fast changing, and that's very true for staffing firms as well. I think for a company like ours, we've always had technology at the heart of our operation.
Right.
But the changes come rapidly, and the platforms, you know, are plenty. But you really have to kind of keep up with what's happening out in the marketplace. And I think this is kind of a transition point to start talking about really what does that really all mean, right? From pencil and paper years and years ago to all the systems and automation we have. The fact of the matter is we all sit on a trove of data, but how are we using it? What do you do with it? Does it give you any insight, or is it just information that's sitting there collecting dust? I think that's really kind of at the heart of the conversation today, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I couldn't agree more with you. You know, about 6 months ago when the world changed, I can tell you that the way our customers were using even our own product, it skyrocketed overnight. People immediately realized the importance of engagement, immediately realized that experience and giving everybody a personalized experience now mattered even more than before. And the other thing that I often talk about is, you know, as we start coming out of this pandemic, unfortunately, there are going to be many more people who are going to be applying for open roles, oftentimes 3 to 4 times the number of people who would apply to a role than they did before. And if you didn't have technology, you're not suddenly going to have 4 times the number of recruiters. You would be hard pressed, you know, to actually find that diamond in the rough to get people exactly where they belong. So it's, I think, very, very pertinent today to talk about how data can help with that. And April, I'll let you lead us off with, this is the right segue into, everybody has this data, everybody has, especially staffing companies, you know, everybody's been in business for 5, 10, 20 years. We've been collecting data over the years, but is it actually working for you?
Yeah, absolutely. we're looking right now at that talent lifecycle, and as Pankaj was mentioning, it's so important now from all aspects of this to one, engage with your candidates, because that communication is so important. But how do you get to those candidates? And really that's top of funnel, and that's where my company, my technology actually sits is at the top of that sourcing side of things. And you think about what type of data you're bringing in through sourcing. And that's changed as well. I mean, it used to just be the resume. Now there's so many different components to that, be it, chat conversations. Are those getting, connected to your applicant tracking system and loaded into your system, or, those types of things that you didn't think about 10 years ago. So it is important to have clean data from the beginning, and data here can be resumes, data here can be conversations. But I'd also love to bring in Azadeen, because he's a practitioner and he's doing this every day. What types of data are you seeing? Are you tracking? What have you found that's important in your business to be aware of?
No, that's literally, our teams, this is where we spend our waking hours, right? You're right, we collect information from all kinds of places. And if you think about a typical staffing, operation, you're getting phone calls from people. So there's data entry that happens. People are walking into the branches, maybe not today, but they will again. So you're collecting information that way through kiosks and recruiters. But obviously a lot of it also happens on mobile phones and desktops, be it contact forms or apply to positions. We've spent a lot of time and energy providing kind of vehicles for candidates who want to, who looked us up and want to do business with us or want to work for us. You have to really give them an easy way to kind of come in. So all of that, ends up in your systems, right? And this doesn't even count all the payroll files that you handle on a weekly basis and all the different imports you get from different platforms. It could be overwhelming, right, at times. But certainly understanding how you're capturing data makes a big difference in what you're going to do with it, right? So that part of it becomes an exercise, daily exercise with operations, looking at your process, and improving, right? Because it's never going to be perfect. And if you think that you have it figured out, you're going to fall behind very, very quickly. Like I said, this is where we spend a lot of our time and energy dealing with that.
Sure. As soon as you figure it out, it changes, right? That's the concept.
Yeah, and one thing that you said that's obviously really important, we talk to our teams about this all the time, and I'm sure everyone on the webinar probably does the same. And none of that matters if the data collected isn't clean, right? So the viability and the value of that data is not going to do us any good. If I have a candidate, we always preach to our recruiters, or be it a front desk person, be it a recruiter, be it any one of us really that talks to a candidate, take a moment and collect the latest phone number and email and kind of complete that profile, because without that, really none of it matters, right? And I think as we start to talk about the rest of we look at the rest of the slides, you'll see that the engagement with the candidate becomes really useless if you don't have the correct cell phone number and the correct email. So that's always a battle, right? So junk in, junk out, it's never been true than it is for staffing.
Absolutely. And I see a place here too for partnering with someone that has use of this data as well. I think that once you understand what you have, you can really power it from that point to help you in a lot of your different functions, whether it be outreach or job acquisition or all of those different components. I think having that managed and knowing where you're starting from is key.
For sure.
So that really brings us to the idea of how do you harness that power of your data. Once you understand it, once you know what your KPIs are, once you know what your goals are, you can really start to look at that data and make decisions. So, looking at, you might say, well, how big of a decision is job acquisition? But it's a huge decision. Where do I grab it from? Where are they going to apply to? How am I going to distribute jobs? Looking at campaign optimization and the way that you're outreaching at the top of the funnel to try to grab those candidates. How am I making these decisions in real time? Where are those distributions going? How am I bringing them back to my ATS? And then from that standpoint, how am I engaging with them from the point of hire and all the way through their life cycle? All of this is fueled by data. And all of this is super expensive in the sense of this is where you're investing a huge part of your budget. If you're not doing it right, this is where you really have an opportunity to make some smart decisions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the things I would chime in with is, just talking about the talent pipeline. It's probably the most valuable thing you have right now. Every staffing company that I talk to, and I've probably talked to over 1,000 of them in the last few years, every company sees, this kind of leaky talent leak across every stage of the funnel that I'm depicting here. You're probably all very familiar with this. If you start with 1,000 candidates, you'd be lucky if you can get to a point that 100 of them have an actual job offer. And once 100 of those, actually get an offer, again, you'd be lucky if 80 of them actually show up on day one. In some industries, we have even 33 to 35% of the people who would actually get out of your funnel and don't show up on day one. Then, of course, of the people who start, there's going to be a smaller number of people who end the assignment. Some people will leave in the middle. They get a better job. They don't like their manager. They don't like the commute. Something or the other is actually going to take them away. And each one of these means that you are losing revenue across every one of these stages. And then of the few people who will finish an assignment in our industry, a dismally small number of those people are actually getting redeployed to another subsequent assignment. And if you think about it, you can power all of this by data. If you knew exactly, hey, these are the people who are finishing their assignments. This is the kind of job that they're good at. Let's start marketing these people to those jobs a month before they're coming out of assignment. Chances are you can double your redeployment rate. Today, and this is the part that April talks about eloquently, in the US, we spend about $60 billion in just acquiring candidates. But sometimes we overlook the fact that we're also losing $24 billion in just turnover. People that you spent all that money on acquiring, but you weren't able to get them started, and then you weren't able to have them finish their assignment completely. Getting them to get redeployed is gravy on top. It absolutely reduces your cost per hire. And then if you think about how our systems are structured today, look at the life of a recruiter on the right-hand side. Only 1/3 of a recruiter's time today is actually spent in what we call human stuff, which is they're either talking to a customer or they're talking to a client, and they're making revenue happen for you. Everything else is just data entry or prospecting, all of which can be automated by technology. And not only automated, to what Azadeen and April were saying before, you can actually make sure that that data is legitimate, it's valid, it's actually gone through some checks and balances. And if that's automated for you, then that's the data that you can run analytics on eventually as well. So anyway,
yeah. I'm sorry, Pankaj, just to jump in. I don't know what you're talking about, but we don't have a no-show problem. Kidding aside, right? I mean, that's you're right. This is a great slide that I know you and I have talked about many times before, and it's very true. And it's costly at every step, right? Just like you mentioned, and definitely the no-shows that we deal with at every level, in every vertical, is super expensive, right? Because we've invested even that much more money. There's another layer that also kind of lives in this slide, and that's the people that actually do come in. We never even talk to them at all. They don't even get vetted. Yes, we didn't spend energy and time on them, but we did spend time and energy acquiring them. And that's, again, those are all discussions that we have internally with our operations folks about, hey, how do we really leverage as many as possible so we can deploy people, right, at the end of the day, and not have to talk to 1,000 candidates so you can just get that 100. Can we increase that by 5%? Can we increase it by 10? And any increase is going to help you down the road for sure.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think everybody on the call today, you're as much of an expert as all of us are in running your companies and running your businesses. And you probably all agree with the fact that there's too much data available. It can be a good thing if you can harness it, but it is useless if you can't. So I think what we're going to walk into in the next section is we're going to talk about your entire talent life cycle. So you're going to see us build a theme here. How do you use and leverage data when you're sourcing and attracting candidates? How do you use them while you get them to a position? How do you use it while people are on assignment? How do you use it to get people redeployed? So we will go through the entire life cycle and hopefully give you some practical, practical tips and tricks to essentially harness data. So let's start with sourcing and attraction, right? So when it comes to sourcing and attraction, how do you identify talent more strategically? So April, why don't you lead us off with that, and then I'll take the next few slides.
Yep, that sounds great. So it is so important to have a strategic plan when you're looking at this. Understanding the recruiting methods that are out there, the ways that you can engage with candidates in different types of roles is huge. And I think for the most part, most staffing companies are pretty informed, especially regionally, about who works for them. But there are so many relationships that you're managing and contracts that you're managing at this point. So if you don't have a handle on them, it becomes very challenging because you're still, from this point, generating a ton of data, right, from different sources into your applicant tracking system, hopefully, if you're doing that. And then, understanding ways to eliminate wasteful spending, especially things that are associated with manually managing job spend across multiple vendors. Again, going back to those multiple contracts, when you're buying multiple contracts for your business, one, you can't necessarily leverage economies of scale. You're looking at an ROI across a whole bunch of vendors, and it's really hard to combine that data and understand the value of what each of those candidates brings to you. And then being able to free up time for your recruiters with a full automation of job advertising is so important. And I think it was Pankaj that mentioned how important those people activities are. It is so important to let your recruiters do what they were hired to do, and that's talk to candidates, that's talking to clients. And you know what? Those conversations make recruiters happy. They hate admin work. Salespeople hate admin work. I hate admin work, so that's all I know. But just so you know that, that's all of those things that go into being able to make smart decisions. And so, programmatic really does remove that guesswork. And programmatic's a new term for staffing. It's really just starting to move into the industry. It's always been a part of large ad buys with retail companies, but now we're starting to look at it because we're buying in such volume and you're having to manage across a platform. And so where programmatic would actually come into play at the top of your funnel when you're talking about data is giving you the ability to look at what your cost per click is costing you, and having bid strategies where you can actually go out and say, is Indeed the best place today? Is ZipRecruiter the best place today? By the hour, by the minute, and make those decisions. Cutting off sources to make those decisions. Looking at your budget across a 30-day period or a 15-day period. How do I make that budget last? And how can I get the most bang for my buck? And then where do I go? Who's the best distribution partner for this? And then when I bring all these candidates back, obviously we're feeding them into the applicant tracking system. And then from that point, how do I engage with them? So Programmatic's going to allow you to really manage that process, drive down cost at the top of the funnel, give you that clean relative data so that every part of your process moves efficiently and you get the best strategy.
Yeah, thank you, April. That totally resonates with me. And actually, I'm going to try and take this a step further from where April left off. This is probably, the most important slide to me personally in this webinar. One of the things you take away from this is you can absolutely turn the data you have in your ATS today into a self-sourcing machine. This is exactly what we help customers do day in and day out using Sense. I'll give you 3 or 4 examples of what this means. One, while your recruiters are sleeping, you can actually reach out to millions of candidates and ask them super simple questions like, are you looking for a job now? Maybe 95% of the people say no, and you can mark them as passive for the moment. Of the people who say yes, you can then ask them exactly which month will you be in the market. Some people would be available in September, October, November, but people start thinking of their jobs a couple of months in advance. All right, so you have that data now. And this is actually updating your ATS. This is triggering a field within your ATS saying, these are the people available in September. These are the people available in October. So anytime So when you come to that time, these people automatically show up in the top of your funnel. These people are automatically available to your recruiters, but this is all happening on an autopilot. The other cool thing you can do with things like this is you can keep your data absolutely clean. This is exactly what Azadeen was talking about before. A recruiter leaves your company, that recruiter was linked to 300 candidates. Instead of those 300 candidates being orphaned, you can actually have a rule written that says, hey, if this recruiter leaves, automatically assign their candidates to this recruiter, or at least assign them to a central number. So anything that is going out from an automation standpoint is still valid. It's still not, paused in any fashion or the other. So essentially harness the data that you've been paying tons of money for year after year for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And
yeah, I'm sorry, Pankaj, not to cut you off there, but just to add to that, as we were talking about this webinar, I think you're right, this slide is really, really important to us as operators as well, and people that live in the front line, right? The ability to really not just automate outreach and notifications, you're going to talk about them, I think, in future slides, but to also get actionable data that again triggers something for the recruiter to do when they come in the morning is really, really important. We do it through different other methods, but also to have this additional platform that allows us to do that is really important, and we're looking really closely into it.
Yep, no, appreciate that. And let me take this into something more provocative. This is what we are hearing from some of our largest customers. 50% of the placements that staffing companies are making today are coming from candidates who already exist in your database. Yet I would challenge many of you, and hopefully many of you would agree with me, that your spend on job boards probably stays the same year after year, if not increases, while you're actually building this database of people time and time again. So, with what I was talking about in the previous slide, if you start harnessing your ATS as a data source, if you start reaching out to those people, if you start collecting latest contact information, latest resumes, you can actually first make your placements from your ATS. Some of the largest companies we work with today have actually reduced their job board spends by 25%, which for some of these companies is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I can't stress enough about the fact that take the time to clean up your data, which we can do using technology, and then take the time to engage with that data. And you would see that a lot of these placements will start coming to you automatically.
Just to add to that, Pankaj, that's a really important point, and it's I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of folks on the webinar. It's an ongoing fight, right? That every staffing firm has. The reality of it, our recruiters love to search, and if you give them 12 different places, they're going to go to those 12 different places and look. And there's always the allure of, I'm going to find the perfect candidate somewhere else. And a lot of times you could actually already have that candidate. It's not as simple as that all the time, but certainly there's a lot of potential in your own database. And if you can refresh that on a regular basis, or you can prove that, hey, the people that I have here are really fresh in the sense that they've come to us and they've contacted us, and we know how to contact them, then it's a no-brainer. We have to do better, collectively, just taking advantage of that.
Absolutely.
Azadeen and Pankaj, if you do this right, if you're following the strategy of good data and a strong relationship with candidates throughout the life cycle, and as you're refreshing talent and re-engaging with them, maybe they were placed and then they left and now they're open, you don't know where they're at in their life cycle.
Right.
That's all brand building, and that's all going to, that ongoing engagement is their relationship. And so, you've paid for this talent, you're utilizing the talent, and you don't have to go get more, right? If you've got a full cupboard, you don't have to go shopping for more. You just have to look and see what you have. And I think there's real value here before even going out to an external site like a PandoLogic, right? I'm saying that, but I really do think that's a best practice for staffing companies, is to use what you paid for, use that relationship, and keep it going.
Yep, absolutely. And, so as you move along, so the first thing we talked about is sourcing and attraction. So you just heard about using the power of data to transform that part of your funnel. The next thing is, okay, so you've done sourcing and attraction, you've gotten to a point where you've got people some offers, you're going to engage with them now, you want to make sure they don't drop in your pipeline, you want to onboard them. That's where some of these things come in. So this is a technology which is a conversational recruiting chatbot. We've been talking about this with Azadeen quite a bit, so I'd love to hear his thoughts on it as well. But this kind of goes back to exactly what Azadeen was saying before, right? Now there is going to be no candidate who comes inbound to you or comes on your site that actually does not provide you at least some level of information, because we are making this super easy for them. So if you spend time and energy on attracting these candidates, like April was saying, either by using a brand and bring them to your website, or by paying for ads or SEO or SEM, if you've done anything to get these people on, you then can have them intercepted by a chatbot, absolutely human conversation like experience, but they get all of this information into your database. And as that happens, the very first interaction that your recruiter is going to have with this candidate is now going to be that much more powerful, because they're coming off of actually knowing a number of different things about you. How much money do you want? What zip code do you want to work in? Are you authorized to work in the US? In the case of, commercial and light industrial, can you lift this much, 50 pounds a day? Can you, stand on your feet for 8 hours a day? Some of your work, your pre-screening is already done for you, which means you're never spending time talking to candidates that won't be a good fit for your role. So Azreen, I'll let you chime in, but this is one of the biggest things that you and I, talk about, which is AI and
natural. I appreciate that. That this is really close and dear to us, because when you look at that funnel that we've been talking about, from our perspective, we're always looking at ways, again, to give time back to the recruiter.
Right.
And we all have a challenge. You post a job and it could be well written, and you put it on PandoLogic and you put it on job boards. And then you have 100 people apply, and maybe 50 of them have no business applying for that job, right? Now, what if we engage with them in this manner, either proactively or even through a post, and allow them to kind of vet themselves, and then maybe route them to the right, desk, right? Because we see that as a huge opportunity for us to kind of improve productivity and just add some efficiency, and again, give time back to the recruiter to really speak to the people that matter to that position, to that job, to that profile. And then also, again, proactively reaching out and mining your data and asking questions, right? And allowing them at their own time, on their phone, any device they want, to be able to kind of tell you what they're looking for, what they're willing to do, how much they're willing to do that. Now, the next step, the other thing that we're talking about, right, Pankaj, and I think it's coming on your roadmap, is I would love to see that taken a step further and actually put that on a recruiter calendar, right, and put it on a branch calendar, so the person can actually show up for the interview, be it on the phone or. So this part of it is really, really important. And obviously there are a lot of platforms and tools that do something like this, but for us, and we'll talk about it in a little bit when we talk about the tech stack, for it to really be kind of seamless and fit into our own ecosystem is really important.
Yeah.
Pankaj, I've seen this in several different instances in my career where a client of mine, a staffing company, receives a ton of resumes. And usually they'll receive them because they realize they're an agency and they want to have some type of conversation with them, but maybe it's through a light industrial role and they're admin. I can't tell you how many times recruiters just ditch them. They don't put them in their system, they go away. Or, I've run some data analysis for a light industrial company, and they received a ton of amazing admin candidates, but they got rid of all of them. And they have a brand.
Send them to us, April. Have them send them to us.
Well, and they have a brand that supports admin, but they didn't have that communication in their company. And so if you have a tool that they can go directly to you and sort out where you need to go, you get to keep the resources. You spent, one job posting, right, if you will, and you did all of that to bring them in, and you didn't lose them in your experience. And I just think this really has some relevance and solves a lot of problems for staffing companies.
Yeah, and I'll continue along this journey here, right? So you got these candidates, you got a bunch of this information. Now that you have this information, you can automatically personalize your outreach to them. So you can actually make sure that you can now reach out to them in a fashion that you're communicating with a Java developer differently from you're communicating with a forklift operator. I mean, they might both be to you a candidate for a job, but they obviously need a different kind of personalization. Some people more like the idea of you sharing a video with them about the mission and values of your company, but others probably just want to hear about your benefits because, they're going to leave you for another competitor just on the basis of that. So please make sure that the moment you do that, you can actually continue your tech stack and continue your automation by saying, now that we know something about this candidate, how do we deliver a personalized experience? Because your candidates absolutely expect that today. They also expect you to meet them where they live. So it's an omni-channel platform. Some people will prefer email, some people will prefer an SMS, some people will prefer a survey, some people will prefer chatbot. So you can actually slice and dice people based on how you want to engage with them. So keep it super personalized once you have that data, because otherwise you're doing disservice to this data that you just collected by actually not using it to your advantage. So deliver personalized mobile first experiences. I can't, stress this part enough. Using both, technologies like PandoLogic as well as Sense, you're able to pull this data directly from your ATS anyway. So, you can actually figure out these candidates prefer an email. These candidates opted out of SMS. I'm going to reach out to these people via this particular channel. Some of these folks prefer us talking in a more casual tone using emojis and GIFs. And some of these people, want more often a formal communication around your processes. Some of the most advanced companies, staffing firms that we work with today, Kimco being at the top of that list, they actually use a lot of these slicing and dicing to make sure that each of these different classes of people are getting different experiences. Also, we work with several staffing companies where you have IT and professional, but at the same time, you have admin and clerical. You're going to want to treat these people differently. Their onboarding is going to be different. So again, one of the biggest things data does for you is just make the outreach personalized. So absolutely, absolutely use that. And then, so you've kept these people engaged, you've screened them, you've gotten them to a point that you have to onboard these people. I think all of you would agree with me when I say onboarding can sometimes be either the most painful process that you run or the most pleasant process, because how you onboard somebody, there is a statistic that says 86% of the people decide in the first 6 weeks of being with a company if they're going to be there for a decade or if they're going to be there for just 6 months. So you can actually streamline your onboarding. Again, completely automated. Hey, you need to fill these forms. These are still unfilled. This still needs to happen. We also now see a lot of companies becoming forward thinking about just taking NPS surveys or pulse of people for onboarding. How was your onboarding? We got you the best job, we got you the best amount of money, but how was your onboarding? So they can continuously keep improving these processes. So anyway, Azadeen, maybe you have thoughts on this, but I feel like onboarding to me is very critical as part of this life cycle, because that's when you go from being a prospect to a customer.
No, 100%. And it is a pain point. And a lot of times it's not so much the technology piece of it. Like for us, we've been paperless for, I want to say almost a decade, right? And we always work on that. But the issue is the onboarding is still a lengthy process. And if anyone is on the call that does business in California, they know that just the amount of disclaimers and notifications you have to provide. And so it adds up pretty quickly. But certainly the easier you can make it for a candidate and the better you can make it for a candidate, the better the experience, right? And we just had an internal conversation with one of our branches about when to even, onboard somebody, right? There's time for it. Like you said, if you don't understand where that fits into that funnel, you may turn people off that don't even need to be placed anywhere, and you're spending time on it. So it's really, really important.
Yep. So, moving forward on our talent funnel, we talked about sourcing and attracting. We talked about candidate engagement and onboarding them. And eventually, now these people are actually on assignment. They're working for you. This is the time to make sure that 1, they're having a great experience. 2, they're completing their assignment. 3, they become your voice. They're giving you referrals. They're giving you sales leads. So it's very important to actually measure then the satisfaction of these folks. And this is, again, very much triggered by data. We have customers who, and Kimco actually made a science out of this, but we have customers who essentially would say, hey, let's trigger an NPS survey to everybody 7 days after they start. If you think about it, that's very different from the way people do NPSs today, which sometimes can be a point in time. Let's just send it out on 1st of Jan or 1st of July. Well, you're getting a point in time data, but if you start doing that dynamically, you can actually have a consistent pulse on how your people are doing. So the more you know, the more you can control. I mean, you have metrics, then you can fix it. So other than Kimco probably has the best NPS I've ever seen in the industry. So this is, probably your space to talk more about this.
No, I appreciate that. And frankly, every time I look at it, the thought that goes in my head is we don't talk enough about it. It really is amazing. And it kind of goes to the care that we know our recruiters give to every person they talk to. And that's huge. And it goes into everything that you just talked about, right? You have to really figure out when and how to engage with people. The challenge that we still have, that we continually work on, and I think that's going to be true for anyone that adopts this technology or any other kind of engagement technology, is to make sure that the participation rate is as high as possible, right? We love what's coming back, but I want to see more candidates engage with us, right? Because what happens, you send 100 and you don't know how many people are going to respond. And if you don't really have an active strategy of making sure that as many people, those 100 texts that went out, are responding, then obviously this number becomes even more meaningful, right? Because you're touching that many more candidates. And it's a conversation that we're always having with our operators, with our recruiters, because you also have to talk about it upstream, right? If you don't introduce this level of touch that the candidate is going to experience, and you set the right expectation, they may not even know that text is coming from you. So,
yep.
So like you said, there is a science to it. But definitely, we're really proud of this number, and I think it speaks to the work that our people put in.
Yeah, and there's also this element of risk management here. I'll give you this example, right? I mean, one of the things you can do with a technology like Sense, of course, for sure, is we actually give you what we call sentiment analysis. So if you reach out to 1,000 people and 300 of them are complaining about job mismatch, or 150 of them are complaining about not getting paid on time, it can actually give you macro trends, because this is now no longer about one person's problem. You clearly have a process that is broken. But at the same time, it can be granular enough to say that here is one person out of those 1,000 who complained about sexual harassment or discrimination, and this needs to bubble up to the very top right away. So, you can actually use technology to say, hey, this one little pulse here is super important, and these 300 different pulses here are actually working together to tell me one single thing.
Yeah, no, and that's really important. And as you know, during implementation and now and even looking further to the new journeys we're going to kind of enable and workflows, and that's actually been a really important piece of it. One of the questions we ask, I don't know if it's a 7-day or the 15-day kind of check-in, is has your job changed, right? Yep. So if you're in the industrial and light industrial space, how many times we put somebody in there to lift boxes, and then we find out they're doing maintenance 2 weeks later, or they're on the roof, right? So talk about risk management and workers' comp issues and risk. So that allows us to kind of quickly, when someone says my job has changed, hey, that's a trigger for that recruiter to call the client and go, what's happened, right? Because maybe we're talking about a different price rate for that employee.
Absolutely.
Training that's needed, but definitely, as you said, we've also seen, someone unhappy, right? The first day they're unhappy. You need to, don't wait until that becomes an issue because they're going to walk out the door. Call them and find out why. Same thing on the client component. We didn't talk a lot about the client engagement, right? If a client is rating an employee as really the best they've seen, but consistently they're unhappy with their attendance, you know what? That's a risk. That assignment is at risk. Pick up the phone and talk to that candidate. So I think there are a lot of ways you can use that data to your advantage to really be ahead of problems, for sure.
Yeah. And this is the last part in this talent life cycle. So you've now leveraged your data, given everybody the best experience that you can. How does this come back to serve you and actually give you more revenue? Well, the way it gives you more revenue is it dramatically reduces your cost per hire. The same people, they now actually like working with you. They want to work with you again. You automatically know when they're coming out. You automatically know that for a position that they're working in, how long before they're coming out, you need to start looking for an alternate job. You set up an internal touch point for your recruiter, for your customer, for your candidate. Everybody's in the loop. And it's like, hey, John here is definitely ending in 7 days. We all agree? Great. The next 7 days, my recruiter is going to do nothing but make sure we can get John in front of as many open opportunities as we can. This person's already vetted. You've already done a background check. You've already paid money to hire this person. Your cost per hire on a subsequent assignment is minimal, which means your gross margin dramatically improves. So, and obviously there are going to be people you're not able to redeploy, but never let them out of your sight. If you're not able to redeploy them, they leave, that's fine. Put them in some sort of a nurture campaign. These people are going to be back 6 months later to 6 years later to 16 years later. I mean, staffing is an industry that goes from cradle to grave. You create your own talent pools and say, you had a great experience with us. You're going to go do something now, something else right now. That's fine. Let's come back and talk to us in 6 months. We're going to be here. Azadeen just talked about a company that's been around for 35 years and has placed 750,000 people, right? They're not going to have 750,000 people working on it every single day, but this is just recycling people who keep coming back to you because they just had the first great experience.
Yeah. And if you don't place them again, but they know you tried,
yeah.
I've had so many candidates over the years to say, I know you really were invested. I know it didn't work. And then having that re-engagement, you've built that relationship and they're going to come back.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah.
It's all building that brand.
So Azadeen, tell us how all of this happens. I mean, we talked about how data can actually help you across every part of your life cycle. How does somebody get started and build this tech stack?
That obviously is where the challenge lays, right? I mean, for me personally, right, you have to step back and really look at your overall tech stack. It's not just about the candidate experience and what we've been talking about. It really starts about your underlying infrastructure. We talked earlier about, the pandemic happened this year. And for us, we were very lucky because we've always invested in technology, and we were kind of ahead of the curve in the sense that overnight, literally people went home Friday and Monday they were working from home and remote, and we took entire operations kind of virtual. That didn't happen by chance because we've been working on that for decades.
Yeah.
Right. So we're fully virtualized, VoIP over IP in the cloud. So we can, if you have an internet connection, you can work from anywhere. And we've had people work out of Germany and India, and I don't care who you are, honestly, from an IT perspective. So you have to start with that. You have to have, and then give a lot of thought to your ecosystem, right? Starting with your ATS and your financial systems, and all of it has to fit, because if you don't have a real handle on that first, then selecting the right platform, the right technology, the right automation is difficult, because one of the things that we try to stay away from, we're not always successful, but the more you have a recruiter bounce between systems and platforms, and it just doesn't work. So you have to really give a lot of thought to how everything integrates. And the great news is, really, if you have the expertise in-house, if not, kind of engage with people like you and April, think about that integration piece really carefully, right? Because that's where the power comes from. How do you pass data back and forth? How do you make sure that it's done in a timely manner, in the manner that you expect it to? One of the things, for example, that we just deployed with PandoLogic is really everything is done through API. So the recruiter doesn't have to go anywhere to initiate anything. They create a position like they always do in our ATS. And by putting the tag on it, it knows, okay, it's going to go and get published here. Same thing, easy apply happens on all the platforms that PandoLogic manages, and the candidate experience is fantastic. And then for us, we control that data that comes in, again, going back to what we talked about earlier. So to kind of answer your question again, is just a lot of thought and kind of careful understanding, because not every solution fits everyone. But certainly, you have to really always be looking at ways to improve productivity. And because at the end of the day, it's like I said, we've talked a lot about candidate today, but it's really also client experience, right? So many different requests and needs and custom solutions for clients. And if you don't really have a tech stack that does that for you and gives you that flexibility, so I can, something as simple as, can I get, a client a consolidated invoice in the format they want?
Yeah.
Again, if you don't have grasp on data and where it lives, how it flows, you can't deliver on that, right? Can I give them the candidate that they expect in the manner they expect, right? Can I give them real NPS readings so they know whether the candidates are happy or not? So that's really, to me, where it starts, is just careful thought about your overall infrastructure, and then really lay out a roadmap that makes sense, and engage with experts like yourselves to really kind of talk through how is it done, because we don't know everything. And I mean, how many times have we, I know my team and yours met in your offices, and we sat through and talked about your roadmap and ours, and kind of line things up, and some things that we talked about then are being implemented and being tested now. So
yeah,
we appreciate that.
Yeah, and something that has been really amazing for me to see during the journey of our own product has been, people are now taking analytics from Sense and sending it directly to their customers. And they're essentially saying, hey, listen, we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk. We've invested in a technology. This is why we take care of our people. This is why we take care of our data. That's why you should do business with us. And there are now people who tell us that they routinely win more RFPs than they were winning before, because their customers actually believe, great, you're actually powered by technology.
Yeah, no, and you and I talked about this not too long ago, and frankly, we don't do enough of that in terms of either in the sales cycle or in our kind of quarterly reviews with clients or monthly reviews. And we have to do a better job of using that, because we do have that information and it's really useful. I would imagine clients would love that.
Yeah. It's a heck of a sales tool when you can show what you've built and how you work efficiently, and you can show them all of those things. They Absolutely. See that and say, I want to work with that company, and they can. So absolutely.
So, we're coming up to the end here. I'm going to take literally 30 seconds to do a little Sense plug. This wasn't meant to be a Sense commercial by any means of imagination. We absolutely wanted to just share thought leadership with you on what we are hearing from our customers. But Sense as a product works across each part of the talent lifecycle. This is what we went through today, from sourcing and attraction all the way to redeployment. Sense Engage, which is an automation journey-based product that sends out automatic touch points. Sense Messaging is a two-way text messaging platform. And then Chatbot is conversational AI that uses machine learning. So all of those products are absolutely purpose-built for staffing, very much at your disposal. And if anybody wants to get deeper into this technology, we'll obviously be more than happy to share. And then one thing that I want to double click on, Azadeen mentioned about this before, we are very much about analytics. What you can't measure, you can't improve. So every single campaign that goes out, you get all of your, robust marketing analytics, open rates, click rates, deliver rates. You can slice and dice your data by branches, by brands, whatever you might like. How's my Philly branch doing compared to my Dallas branch? How's Chevron as a customer doing compared to Google as a customer? How's John as a recruiter doing compared to Stephanie as a recruiter? So you can absolutely see all of that. This is a topic I'm passionate about and can probably spend an hour talking about it. But in the interest of time, I'll just put it out there that there are more analytics that you can throw a stick at, but we'll be happy to talk more about that. And April, if you want to tell us a little bit about PandoLogic, I'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've told quite a story here today about the evolution of, that talent pipeline and looking at data. Where PandoLogic really comes into play is at the top of the funnel, where we would take your job feed, as Azadeen was mentioning, we take the jobs either through API, we can scrape, we can use all different types of methods. We can utilize all of the key native applies like LinkedIn and Indeed and maximize your apply process. But when we bring that data into our algorithms, we make real-time decisions for you so that you don't have to, and we take that day trader for talent out of the equation, again, allowing you to maximize someone's skill set in a different way where they're not having to sit and optimize their campaigns. We're consolidating all your vendors into one place, and we're leveraging our economies of scale, so we're buying better And therefore, we're passing that savings through to you. And I just crunched some numbers, Pankaj, and if you guys are saving them 25% in the processes that you're doing, and we're saving them 25% at the top, that's a pretty amazing savings just by using technology in your process. So that's what we can bring to the table, being able to help you make smart decisions based on our data of 10 years of historical data, 200 billion data points, 500 different distribution points. There's a lot there that we can do. And keep your eye out for our workforce grant, where we're helping your clients get back to work. There's an offer there that allows you to test out this technology and see if it works for you. We know you're all trying to do, not necessarily do more with less, but redistribute those funds so that you can reinvest in your processes. And if you combine the tools at the top of PandoLogic and combine the tools of Sense, you're off to a really great start. So thank you guys so much for having us here today.
Wonderful, thank you. So, this is exactly what happens to me when I talk to Azadeen and April. Time flies by. So we have less time than we thought for Q&A, but, maybe in the interest of time, we'll take, one quick question that I think, Azadeen, I'm going to throw over at you. But essentially, one of the questions we got in was, is there a good place to start in the talent journey? And you've got 30 seconds to answer that.
Yeah, so real quick, everywhere. No, I mean, really the engagement component of it is really important, right? Is when you put an employee to work, to really stay close to that employee. They showed up, they're happy with the first day, they're happy the first week, because frankly, when we looked at all of it, the way we got in was to really solve that problem, because we were asking every one of our recruiters every day, physically pick up the phone, call this person, confirm they showed up, confirm they've done that. And if you can really make a big difference there, you'll see some productivity hours come back to you, and then you can look at all the other elements. But I think that's a really, really important piece to keep it short.
I love that. Thank you so much. There are a few other questions we got. We will promise to follow up with whoever asked that question. But I want to thank all of you for joining us today and taking the time to learn more about how you can harness the power of data. And I would absolutely want to thank April and Azadeen for giving us their time. And thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us. Take care.
Everybody.
Thank you.